Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Do? Why, if I had a brain, I could...
Miles per hour.
I could while away
46, 56 degrees.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming today. My name is Phoebe, and I'm a paleontologist. Now, many of you might assume that that means that I study dinosaurs, and especially since we're about to watch a movie about dinosaurs. Turns out I don't study dinosaurs. I study microscopic fossils that lived hundreds of millions of years before dinosaurs evolved. But fortunately, I still know lots about dinosaurs, and I know even more about paleontology. So, what are fossils? So fossils are the remains of once living things, mainly things that have gone extinct. So things like dinosaurs, but also lots of other types of living things too. So fossils can be made of animals, plants, bacteria, basically anything that was once alive can get turned into a fossil if it's lucky enough. And so as paleontologists, we use those fossils to try to reconstruct the history of life on Earth and understand things like mass extinctions, for example. So first, we're going to learn a little bit about how things become fossils in the first place. And to do that, I'm going to show you a short video that I wrote the script for. That basically gives you instructions on how to turn yourself into a fossil. So if this is something you're curious about, pay close attention, take notes.
Imagine being a fossil, touring the world's great museums, inspiring awe and onlookers of all ages, posing for hordes of fawning photographers. Sound like something you like? Well, good luck. At least 99.9% of creatures that have ever lived aren't preserved in the fossil record. But forget about them, everyone else will, and listen up. If you want your corpse in the exclusive 0.01% club, the Hall of Preserved Fossil Fame, it will not be easy. You better work. Step 1, die. It's a cold, hard fact of fossilization. Everything paleontologists find was once alive and at some point died. We'll skip the details and assume you had a long, fulfilling life so we can get to what's really important, how you die. There are many ways to become a fossil, so let's highlight your top death options. You could get yourself trapped in tree sap, which when hardens turns into amber and can survive intact for millions of years. But unless you find a really big tree to sit under, amber preservation will likely remain the domain of insects and other very small animals. Generally, the right place to be if you want to end up a fossil is wherever sediment is actively being deposited, like a lake or an ocean floor. A mountaintop or prairie? Not good. You need to get buried. The faster the better, because the longer you hang around on the surface, the more likely you'll get eaten, scavenged, or otherwise destroyed before ever having a chance to get preserved. If you can get buried someplace with little to no oxygen, like a bog or a deep lake bottom, even better. That lack of oxygen will slow down your decay and give you more time to fossilize. So let's say you're lucky enough to die and get buried in a shallow sea under muddy, sandy sediments. What's your next move? One option is a process called permineralization. While all your soft parts decay away, your bones get saturated with mineral-rich waters. Bit by bit, microscopic crystals precipitate out of these waters to fill in the empty spaces and pores in your bones. Otherwise, you'd better hope the sediments around you harden while your bones decay away, and another sediment or mineral fills in the spaces your bones leave behind, creating a perfect cast of your skeleton. Over time, the sediments around your fossil will lithify or turn into rock. But you're not in the clear yet. Many things could happen to those sedimentary rocks that might destroy your chances of getting discovered. They could get uplifted into a mountain range and eroded away, or carried along in an oceanic plate and subducted back into the Earth's mantle, melting your fossil into hot mush. Fingers crossed your rock surroundings will get gently lifted up by plate tectonics. Sea levels will change and you'll end up under dry land, close to the surface, but not so close that erosion from wind and rain wipes you away before someone can come find you. The last step in this long process, an intrepid paleontologist has to come find you. Maybe she's a research scientist scouting for fossils your age and type, or just an amateur collector hoping for a fortuitous find. She whacks away at layers of rock above you, or spots your fossil exposed in a creek bank after a flood. And there you are, a magnificent scientific discovery, millions of years in the making. She and her colleagues gently extract you from the surrounding sediment, measure and photograph all the bits and pieces they find, and begin the complex task of reconstructing how and when you lived based on the evidence they find in your bones. Paleontologists will be some of your biggest fans, along with all those admiring crowds at the museum. You made it. You spent years underground in obscurity, shedding blood, sweat, tears, and your internal organs. You worked yourself to the bone till your bones disintegrated and were replaced by minerals and sediments. But it was all worth it, because you're a famous fossil. Now you better hold that pose.
All right. So now we all know how to become a fossil. So if you've got big plans for your future, now you've got a roadmap to follow. So the video showed different ways that we can get fossils. And now we're going to actually look at what those fossils are like. So the movie that we're going to watch isn't actually about fossils, right? It's about fossils coming to life. But we're going to look now at some examples of actual fossils. So everything I'm going to show you that I'm going to pass around is real. It's an actual fossil. It's not a replica. It's not a cast. It's a real fossil from the Williams College fossil collections. And I'm just going to show a picture of what you'll see before I pass it around. So everything's real, which means that it's fragile. So please be kind to these fossils so that they can all come back to me. This one's the heaviest. Okay, so this is an ammonite. This is related to a squid. It's like a squid with a shell. Okay, for those of you who've ever seen a chambered nautilus, it's like that. And these guys went extinct around the same time as the dinosaurs, actually. And they lived in the oceans. This is one of my favorite fossils. So Wiley's going to help pass the fossils around. And that one you can see shows a nice example of permineralization that the video talked about. The next fossil are leaves. So plants can become fossils too. And in Jurassic Park, we'll actually see that Ellie gets really excited about some of the plants that the dinosaurs are eating because they're basically been reconstructed from the original plants that lived when the dinosaurs were around. So this one, I'm just going to pass around half of it, is a fossil plant. The next one is a rock I really like because it's basically a rock made almost entirely of shells. This is actually pretty common. So this is a rock that would have been found in the ocean where like a lot of seashells would have accumulated all together and formed a rock made almost entirely of fossils. This next little guy is called a trilobite. A trilobite is an extinct arthropod related to like a horseshoe crab or lobsters, things like that. So you can see that it has segmented body parts, just like insects and lobsters and things like that today. These guys went extinct about 250 million years ago. If I could bring back one extinct organism, it would be these little guys because I think they'd make great aquarium pets. So that'd be my vote. Okay, next up, these. Does anyone know what these are? No. Well, sort of. You're cheating. Okay, what's a coprolite? It's poop. Okay, as the student who has taken free classes from me at Williams will tell you, sometimes we get really lucky and poop gets fossilized. And that may seem kind of gross and weird, but it turns out that poop is really interesting because when we can look inside the poop, you can pass those both around, we can actually look and see what animals like dinosaurs were eating. So we can find little bones and seeds and other things inside the fossilized poop. All right, this next one is a footprint. And this is a footprint of a dinosaur. This footprint is from just about an hour east of here, okay, near Amherst. And it's a footprint of a three-toed dinosaur, just like the raptors that we're going to see in Jurassic Park. It was made by an earlier relative of the velociraptors. So that's one of my faves. And next up, we've got amber. So for those of you who have seen Jurassic Park before, you know the important role that amber plays in this movie, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in a second. But amber is hardened tree sap, like in the video that we just saw, okay? So when you walk by a pine tree and maybe put your hand on a pine tree and you take your hand off and it's covered with all that sticky stuff, that's sap. And over time, that can actually harden into the stuff that sort of looks and feels like plastic, but it's actually tree sap. And sometimes insects and other small animals can get stuck in that sap and fossilized. And so here's a couple little pieces of amber. And last but not least, we've got an actual piece of dinosaur bone, okay? So this is a bone from the leg of a dinosaur, and it's a lot like your bone, and it has all that soft porous stuff in the middle, okay? So this is an example of permineralization, like in the video we just saw. Okay, so while we're looking at the fossils, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the movie that we're about to see and talk a little bit about the science in that movie. So the movie we're about to see isn't about fossils. It's about fossils that have come back to life, things that should be fossils. And the scientists who figured out how to bring those dinosaurs and other animals and plants back to life, and then the trouble that they get into after they've done this. So in the movie, how do the scientists do that? Well, what they did is they extracted DNA from an insect inside a piece of amber. And the movie actually has like a little fake science video that we'll see that explains how they did that. And so what they did is they took blood out of the belly of a mosquito that had bitten a dinosaur, and that blood contains DNA, which is the genetic information that codes for all living organisms. It's basically the instructions that makes you or a fly or a dinosaur, you or a fly or a dinosaur. Once you're done, you can just bring them back up. Or you can hand them to Wiley. You can put them back in the box. Thanks. So the question is that actually possible? Is any of the science that we're going to see in Jurassic Park actually possible? Yeah. So it turns out that you can extract DNA from dinosaur bones. Whoever has a dinosaur bone, want to hold it up for a second? Yep, that's a dinosaur bone. Okay. So if we were to take that bone, probably a nicer one than that, and crush it up, we might be able to extract a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of DNA. But it would never be enough for us to actually build a whole dinosaur out of it. However, we can take much younger things, okay, and get DNA out of them. So things that are like 10,000 or 100,000 years old, bones of animals and actually humans and our relatives, we can get DNA out of those bones because they're much younger and they still preserve some DNA. The question of whether or not we could use that DNA to actually build an organism isn't totally clear, but we can get DNA out of it. You have a question?
baby mammoths?
Yes, we have found entire frozen baby mammoths, but those are actually really young too.
To revive those?
So there are people who think that we can build a mammoth by basically getting an elephant to help us out, but no one's actually tried it yet, and so it's still in the realm of science fiction. But for Jurassic Park, the problem is that the dinosaurs went extinct a really long time ago. So Spring Street, okay, the top of Spring Street at Route 2, and Lickety Split at the bottom, is about 1,200 feet long, okay? So if the present is at the top of Spring Street at Route 2, the oldest good DNA that we have from the fossil record is about 2 feet down Spring Street. The dinosaurs are at Lickety Split. So there's a lot of time there. The material from dinosaurs is way, way, way older than anything we've been able to get DNA out of, because DNA turns out to be a really fragile molecule. It breaks down really easy. And therefore, the chances that we would actually be able to get all of the DNA to make a dinosaur, slim to none, which makes Jurassic Park all the more fun to watch. Do you have a question? Yeah. Sorry, what animals are they from? It's pretty hard to tell, but I would say either a mammal or a dinosaur, or a reptile like a dinosaur. Yep.
So I just will have a million-year-old piece of poop.
Many millions of years, yes, you did. Now you can tell everyone that you've held really old poop. Yeah, exactly. Cross it off your bucket list. All right. So one more thing before we start the movie. So I talked a lot about the science of sort of the DNA and building the dinosaurs and stuff like that. But there's one other thing that Jurassic Park got wrong when it came out. And we can't blame them for getting it wrong when it came out, because this was still sort of cutting edge research then. We can blame all the other movies they've made since for getting it wrong, because they have no excuse. And the thing that they've gotten wrong is that many of the dinosaurs that you're going to see in this movie should be covered in feathers. And those feathers are not feathers that they would have used to fly. They're feathers that they would have used to probably keep themselves warm. So they would have been like short little feathers, almost like things that you would see on a penguin or another flightless bird. Not the feathers that you would see on like a robin or a crow. And so many of the dinosaurs, including the velociraptors and T-Rex, should have been covered in feathers. But the Jurassic Park people decided that just doesn't look very cool. They don't think it looks very cool. So they haven't put feathers on any of the other dinosaurs since. But so when you see this, if you're having a moment where you're feeling kind of scared by T-Rex or the velociraptors, just imagine them covered in fuzzy pink feathers and you will feel better. Okay? All right, we'll take just the 2 questions that were raised and then we'll get started to the movie. Yep. Triceratops used to have porcupine quills. I didn't know that. This is very cool.
Another flaw with most of the movies is that a lot of the dinosaurs in them aren't from the Jurassic era.
Well, that's also very true. So dinosaurs were around for 3 geological time periods, the Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. So the fact that they should have called it Mesozoic Park, it would have been more accurate, but apparently this just doesn't sound as catchy to the Hollywood execs, and so they just went with Jurassic Park. Yes, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about the inaccuracies of this movie, but I think it's probably more fun to just watch the movie, maybe. All right, one more question.
Okay, so this is a question. But I heard that like they found an egg, right?
Yep.
And it was like fossil. But
Yep.
They took something and they put it in an ostrich egg, and it was but it died.
I don't know about that, but as far as I know, no one's been able to genetically reconstruct an extinct organism yet. People are trying, but so far it hasn't worked. So, and even if it could work, it couldn't work for dinosaurs. It could only work for things that have gone extinct much, much more recently. So that's the science of Jurassic Park for now. All right.